Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the Economic Development Commission meeting to order. Today is November 13th, 2014. Are we being recorded?
I saw
Right
him
now,
here earlier.
Wrong girl.
Is somebody here?
Yes, he was here earlier.
Okay. Let's just wait till that goes on. Good morning.
Come on.
She might have turned it on and left.
It doesn't look like the lights up.
We know how to.
I don't know how to do
Last
it.
time I touched that thing, I didn't know how to do it, so.
Yeah, you could go back up here if you want. We do know someone that knows how to use it.
Push the red button and hold it down.
Last time I did it, it didn't work, so I'm not touching it.
I don't know.
It's like trying to figure out how to work the VCR.
Still.
I never use it, so I don't know how to do it. I can create a website, but I can't do that.
I'm going to talk about this up here, or we're going to wait him, because obviously he's going to leave that, so we're going to do that after.
Let's see. I think he'll probably talk about it up there.
Yeah.
We're good? All right, once again, I'd like to call the Economic Development Commission to order. Today is November 12th, 2014.
13.
Excuse me, 14. 13 on the 2014.
Anyway.
Do we have any comments on the minutes from the last meeting? Okay, do we have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Okay, second?
Okay.
Thank you. Planning Director update. Hiram Peck.
The couple things. We had just recently an accounting firm moved into Powder Forest. I don't know if you were involved with that, Rich, or not. But anyway, 15,000 square feet of an accounting firm that moved here from Avon. So I just want to let folks know about that.
That's great.
No,
That's right. One of the other projects that's coming in actually today by noontime is 690 Hop Meadow Street. That's the former Webster Bank building on the corner, brownstone. That is a rehabilitation of that building. I've talked a little bit about it before. Some apartments behind that building, very nice architectural details and design. I've seen preliminary drawings, and as I said, that'll be in this afternoon. It'll go to the Design Review Board on Monday, and the Zoning Commission, if not Monday, the following meeting, 2 weeks from now. But it should be a nice project as well, so that's moving forward. One of the other things that we talked about a little bit is that there'll be a meeting of all the property owners in the shared parking district within 2 to 3 weeks. I'm trying to work out the details of that now, let people know what's going on, what's proposed, some comments, pro and con, and trying to work that out right now. We also will be submitted today at noontime, a grant for a transit-oriented development planning district. And that's actually scheduled to do 2 or 3 things. One is to use the express bus stop at Winslow Place for redevelopment area, sort of the center of that redevelopment area. The focus of this particular grant is transit-oriented development, and so the bus stop certainly serves as a significant portion of that particular focus of that grant. About 60% of the commuters that leave from town leave from that particular parking lot.
That's the one.
By Riverview?
Yeah.
Yep. And so that's the one that will be the kind of the focus of that. You may recall that about almost a year ago, we started working in the Weetag Village District. We got that study about 2/3 done, and this grant would allow us funding to finish that up, to use the express bus stop as a sort of focus for finishing that overlay zone as well, providing some incentives for a streetscape in there, some crosswalks, possibly sidewalks, a way to get, for example, from the inn to the Riverview without getting run over, would be helpful. So those kinds of things will be looked at. In addition to that, what we did when we did the Route 10 study, you may remember, is we actually created Village Green for the Weetag area, and sort of the correction or the rationalization, if you will, of the roads that all come to, where Canal Place is, and Stratton comes in. Net green would solve a lot of those issues and actually sort of create some really nice substance for the whole Weetag area. So we put that grant together this week. We received, on Monday night, we received the Board of Selectmen approval to make that application. And yesterday at noon, we received the COGS, Capital Region Council of Governments, approval and support letter for that. So we'll submit that today and find out by mid-December, whether we've gotten that or not.
How much is it?
$175,000. So about $40,000 to finish up the zoning on that, along with some significant design work, somewhat similar to the type of design work we did in the center, but not as intense, probably. A lot of it is about $95,000 for engineering for the Route 10 material and the crosswalks and things like that. But that's about $175,000. So we're hopeful that that'll work out really well. We put a lot of work into that. Can give people copies of that after today. As soon as I submit, I'm happy to send out copies of that if people want to see that as well. Continuing to work with the Economic Development Task Force, and I'm sure someone will be here to talk about that later if you have any questions about where they are. I'm sure Chris and some other members can talk a little bit about that as well. So that's it for kind of update now. You want me to skip to the, yeah, Dave.
Cool, let's go. Well, what's the status on groundbreaking for the pool bond, do you know?
They want to start very soon. They called me last week, and they're anxious to start very soon. I don't have a specific date. I know that they want to get started very soon. They have to work out their final approval with DOT. That's in the works now. Has been in the works for a little while. They've submitted their final drawings to us for that development. They'd like to get started this year.
Anything new on I know they're mining the soil or the gravel down on the Ensign Bickford property when you go into the Powder Forest?
Yeah. Yep. They have a permit to get that site sort of leveled up and prepared for development, and that's what they've been in the process of
It's
doing.
like a 2-year venture.
Yeah.
That site's where the assisted living is going to go, or is that further up?
That's what the proposal was for. It's in that particular area. That's exactly right.
So the commercial's in front of that?
Yes.
Oh.
And behind the sort of front lawn piece,
Yeah.
just behind that where the proposed assisted living facility, the zoning commission will also see, and the design review board will also see at their next meeting on Monday, the development for the residential portion of that Powder Forest as well. The land works people are coming back with their units. Some townhouse units, some apartment units. That's a sizable development that's down behind the inn. There comes down behind the inn. So that's on the works as well. We got those plans recently, and those are in the office in case anybody's interested in looking at those.
I say my last question. It's my best question.
Want me to do it? Want to ask?
I don't have to ask. Just give us the answer, Aaron.
Was it one? There's one or two questions.
That's one. Why do you ask?
I don't have anything new on either one of them, so I can say that. What I'm told is that before the end of the year, it's supposed to close, and we'll see what happens with that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Question on with the Webster application or the Webster Bank application, have they been invited to come to speak for EDC, or they're not quite ready for that?
Yeah, they're not quite ready for that yet. They're welcome. Talk to them this afternoon and find out whether they would like to do that at your next meeting. They're happy to do that. They've expressed an interest in doing that.
Okay, good.
Dorset Crossing, when is the anticipated completion date? Do you know? I mean, those went up very quickly, like overnight, some of those.
Yeah, they're moving right along. They brought in crews from all over. I don't have a specific occupancy date. I do know that they want to have some people in there by the end of the year.
Wow.
If you look at www. Simsbury Living, they've got a whole blurb on what they're doing up there and when they're starting to run up.
Okay.
So they're moving right along.
Do you know about the property across from the middle school? What's going on, or Ray, the barber shop, the K style, they,
On Plank Hill?
yes.
Right at the corner?
Yeah.
That was approved several months ago for a small planned area development. The building that was previously there, that was a commercial building, an office building, that's actually going to turn into 2 residential units. And they're coming along with that now. They were slowed down a little bit. The owner of that property had some development in Avon that he was working on. It was a lot bigger than this smaller development, so he had to finish that first. but I've called them, and they're actually making some significant progress now. That building will be two residential units attached, actually. There'll be a common wall. There'll be two separate units. And then behind them, where the parking lot used to be, there'll be two separate single-family units as well.
Oh,
So they're ready to market those very shortly. They've come in with a sign for marketing them. So there'll be 4 units there total on that property.
the sign is up and they're being actively marketed at the moment.
Okay. Well, I saw the sign, maybe staff's taking care of that right
Yeah, I
now.
saw the sign, so I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Is the hearing still open on the Greenberg development unit down there on Route 10?
No, the zoning commission will make a decision on that Monday night. I've just written 2 motions for them, one pro and one con, and they will pick what they want to do and have a discussion on that Monday night. They don't have to make a decision Monday night, but I suspect they probably will, depending upon if they have any other questions.
All of the commissions that have been before have given positive referrals, or have any of them been negative?
No, they have all been positive.
All been positive.
Yeah.
Thank you. Reports. Who would like to go first?
Nancy first.
Nancy would like to go first.
Okay. Nancy first it is. Really feels like I haven't been here in so long and I only missed last month.
That's because you were in a warmer climate.
I was indeed. In the first 4 days it was in the 80s, and then for the entire wedding weekend it was in the 70s. It was glorious, and I did not want to come home. But home I am. And I came back to Haunted Miniature Golf. We had our last week. It was fun and wonderfully successful. The only problem we had this year is 2.5 days where it was raining. And so obviously our income was not what it was last year, but that's really okay. We had a terrific time. We went right from that into still working on the guide and the last couple of members, and then what's happening on Sunday, and I gave you each a flyer. And yes, it should have been somewhere near Halloween, but in any case, Lisa Johnson, Executive Director of the Stanley Whitman House, is going to do her lecture on grave matters in the Farmington Valley, and she will be talking about cemeteries, headstones, giving us an idea of why they're faced the way they are, and the symbols, and it should be really interesting, 2 o'clock on Sunday. And it's very expensive to come. It's only $5 per person as a donation, so maybe we'll see some of you there. She is a wonderful speaker. She does cemetery tours, so this should be really interesting for us. December is usually a quiet time for us because everybody has their holiday things and annual meetings, so we try not to do too much in January, but we are already planning a membership mixer in February, April lecture on taverns, and then our tavern bus tour the beginning of May, and off we go. So, short report.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No, you have to go. Yes, you have to talk to me.
Rich Correa from Simsbury Main Street Partnership.
Oh, I didn't do that, sorry.
I am Sarah today, so she's on vacation. We held a vacation. I've only spoken to her 5 times this week. She's on vacation. So we held the opening reception for the Travel Art Poster Competition last Friday, November 7th at the 1820 House. And if you have an opportunity, you should go in there. In the parlor, you can vote for your favorite poster that the artists have done. And it's capturing the branding of Simsbury, of our heritage, charm, and adventure. So and while you're there, you can also sneak into Metro Beast and grab something there. Secondly, we're focused on the holidays for small businesses. Main Street is one of the American Express official neighborhood champions, and we've designed a mailer that will hit all the households in Simsbury. I thought I was going to have the mailer here, and it wasn't in the box this morning, so I apologize for that. But it talks about advantages of shopping locally and getting to our mom and pop stores throughout our district of Simsbury. We have according to the businesses that what they will offer on Black Friday and Small Business Saturday. And the flyer will also be handed out at Fitzgerald's as people go through the turnstiles there. Another part of trying to get people to shop Simsbury, this will be our 3rd year, I believe, working with the Simsbury Masons and the Salvation Army. We will have boxes for a collection of toys at Antonio's. for the North Village, Sarah Burns Goldsmith at Simsbury Town Shops, the Town Hall, Fitzgerald's Foods, and the Simsbury Inn. That was to help some poorer families of the greater Hartford area to give them a little bit of a brighter holiday season. And it also gets our stores, some promotion. In years past, Sarah has been on WTIC radio for a segment, and it ranges anywhere from 10 minutes to sometimes they've had her there for a half an hour. And she's talking all about Simsbury with the Masons. And we've also gotten the Junior Women's Club to support this great cause this year. And at our last Simsbury Main Street board meeting, Hiram came in and gave us a presentation on the tax increment financing proposal that you will be all talking about here today. So we've offered him some input into that. And we believe that Hiram is doing a tremendous job for the community. And I hope that everyone appreciates his efforts. So, thank you. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda,
Sorry, one last thing. I'd like to welcome Lisa as the new executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. Main Street has met with her a couple of times, and I think it's going to be great. And
Good
I've had a couple of meetings.
Next on our agenda, we welcome the new executive director of the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce, Lisa Gray.
Thank you very much. Good morning. So this is what you all look like from this side of the table. Lou and Nancy and Hiram know I'm used to sitting in that chair for 18 years. I sat there a long time. So it's good to be here this morning. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I don't come out at this ungodly hour for just anybody. So it's very special.
You're not the only one.
I finished up my first 2 months at the chamber yesterday. It's official. And it's been a very, very busy time, but exciting as well. And one of my goals as the new executive director is to try to reestablish some of the lines of communication between ourselves and the town that may have faltered in recent years. So I've been working on that. I met with Nancy Mary. Met with Nancy also several times at our events. I met with Mary and talked with her a few times. So we are very excited about relocating, hopefully very soon, and possibly teaming with some of the other town entities in a hub location somewhere in town, possibly at the Simsbury Historical Society, but that's not definite yet. We may be teaming with Main Street, possibly have a visitor center, have tourism there, maybe even a free bike, but that's all still kind of in the talking stages. We've visited the Historical Society, but nothing is definite yet, and we do have a target date set for moving of June 30th of next year. And we'd like to stick as close to that as possible, but we have not yet given notice to the Free Library. Let's see, I made some notes on here. Any of you are welcome to attend our Board of Directors meetings if you'd like to. They are always held on the first Wednesday of the month. So our next one is going to be on December 3rd, or our Government Affairs Committee, which Lou heads for us, and that's always on the second Tuesday of the month. So our next meeting there is going to be Tuesday, December 9th. We're still having our monthly Good Morning Simsbury meetings. The next one is at Ravenswood Natural Health next Wednesday. If any of you are interested in attending, 8 to 9. So you can actually sleep in on that day. and we have our monthly after hours as well. The next one's coming up at Bill Seelig Jewelers, so you can finish your Christmas shopping while you're there if you want to. That's on December 11th. And the Good Morning Simsbury meetings are open to everyone, not just members, and they're free. And just beginning this month, we opened up the after hours to everyone as well. We just charge $10 for non-members, just so people have a chance to check us out and see what we're all about. So I think that's going to be very successful. And we're bringing back our directory of members, so look for that in early to mid-spring. And I think that's it. Anything else, Lou?
Nothing I can think of. The most recent after hours was very well attended.
Very, very well.
The other night at the Redstone.
Yes, we did it in honor of Veterans Day.
Right.
Good thing the fire marshal wasn't there.
That's right.
Yeah, it was pretty crowded. But everybody raved about it. It was a lot.
How many members does the chamber have now?
We have just over 300 now.
300?
Yeah.
that encompasses some, they're not all necessarily Simsbury businesses,
Correct.
all right?
Yeah, we have some in Canton, Avon, Granby, yeah.
Has membership over the last 5 years decreased?
Yes, unfortunately it has, but we're gonna get that back up again.
If you become a member now, what does it cost to become a member?
It depends on the number of full-time employees that you have in your business. So for instance, if you're just a sole proprietor or you have just one person working with you, it's 180. 3 to 5 is 250, and it goes up from there.
I was curious because not at the last meeting that I went to, but the one before, the new site manager of Dino came. And it's the first time I've seen any representation from Dino in the chamber, or am I wrong on that?
Well, since I'm so new, I'm really not sure, but that's what I hear.
There has been representation in the past, at times, there has been, different events, yeah. They've attended some meetings and events. I think they've been to government affairs a couple of times. We actually have, I think our next government affairs meeting will have that person speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On the
that's a good
agenda.
idea to stay
Yeah.
close, because
Right.
as you appreciate, Dino owns that whole complex site, which we think of as Ensign Bigfoots. And there are about 200 people working in the aerospace EVAD division, but that's on a lease arrangement between Ensign Bigfoot and Dino. I mean, and everyone should understand, in total, there are probably 400 people down there, so it's a
Right.
good.
Right, so
good appointment.
this woman is going to come at our next government affairs meeting to speak and talk about
Yeah, Rena.
what they're
Rena
doing,
Patel.
yes.
Okay,
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is the EDC website update. Do we have any updates on our website at all? Or
Yeah, I
would you
can,
like to address that?
sure. So since I was last here, I think when we had mentioned we were going back out to virtual town hall, the contract that had been submitted was reviewed by the marketing group of the task force, and virtual town hall came back to us on 2 or 3 issues that they were happy to comply with, one of which was the 3-year contract being reduced down to a 1-year contract, which we thought was important because we wanted to make sure that if we, as we still move forward with this, that we weren't tied into something that wasn't going to meet our needs. And I think since that time, and actually just recently, Hiram and Rick and I met, there was a little bit of misunderstanding on the 3rd, so I think we're going to be able to resolve that as well. And that being said, Rick Bizzano came to our last task force meeting, and he did talk briefly with the group about some of the things that we've currently or already talked about, which is really staying under the Drupal platform and the priorities of not forgetting the sort of entire work of the website being towards the governance of the town. So we are keeping those things in mind, and actually out of a meeting with Hiram and Rick, we're going to be meeting on Tuesday with virtual town hall. So Rick has reached out to see what they could do for a full-on website for us, and what we're going to do is review our sort of top choices with them and the functionality and look and feel that they can accommodate. So we're sort of trying to exhaust that resource to see if we can work through that. It's certainly been determined that that would probably be a much less costly thing, certainly not what we were looking at with some of the initial 1, 2, 3 choices. But I think some of the numbers that we've been hearing out of going outside of the virtual town hall platform. So on that end, we have been refining the RFP based on some of the feedback from virtual town hall, breaking out the design work. Hiram and Rick had requested that we wait until we meet with virtual town hall and then send that RFP out if we really find it is necessary. So we might be able to achieve sort of a happy medium of what we want to do through virtual town hall. It'll save a lot of retraining for town staff and a lot of those things. So we're very close, and we'll have definitely more information not only after that meeting, but certainly when we come before you guys next month.
That's at 5 o'clock, right?
5 o'clock.
So our time frame is the next month or 2?
I think Rick seemed to think so. He, we're going to have, like I said, the guys from virtual town hall there and accommodate the ability to really view some websites and discuss what their capabilities are. And so we'll have a lot of information from them, and then if necessary, the RFP out and probably back by that point.
This isn't a conference call with them, they're actually
No,
coming
they're
here.
actually coming.
Okay.
Yeah, so when Rick and Hiram and I, so we've had a lot of meetings with various people. The email went out to the marketing group. I invited Chris to come with her work on this, just to get all the right people in the same room so that we're talking through all the points that we've been discussing over months to get to the bottom of it. So I'm very optimistic that's going to happen on Tuesday, and we will have a lot more information for you guys next month.
So we can put you on the agenda for next month.
Yes.
On part of the website, but where does the mapping and GPS part of it all stand? I know that's a much bigger venture, but where does it stand status-wise? And then at some point, whenever that may be, will it be able to be incorporated into this website? Is that being discussed? So
There'll be a button on the front page that go to the GIS. There'll be a disclaimer. The wording for the disclaimer has already been worked out. The mapping is essentially complete. They're looking for the answer to one question on the zoning map that I have to get back to them on. It's a complex question. I'm trying to work that out in my spare time. And probably,
you're going to knock that off.
I don't mean to be sarcastic, but it's just one of those things where they're working on the rest of it, and I will get that to them as quick as I can. But I would think within a week or two, it should be ready to go.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were trying to do it for October.
Right.
And
Very excited.
Yeah, no, it really.
My work is done here.
We could wait till December 24th.
Can I push the button? Can I push the start button?
I think people are really gonna like it. I think it'll be very helpful. And I think one of the things too, if I may, is I think that the work we're trying to do to put this all together, the simple sort of answer to this is we're trying to get information to people very quickly so that they can understand what they're looking for and get to it quickly. I think the site that's up there now is confusing. The information is there, it's just hard to get to. It's hard to understand, not as intuitive as it ought to be. So I think that's what we're really looking for.
Yeah.
And we want to see, tell us, can you do this or not? And then we make that decision.
Right. And we also said, and I believe we're going to have the president of the company as part of the meeting, are there other functionalities that we're just not aware of? Are we at sort of the bronze level package, and are there other capabilities that they might have? And we talked about really wanting to have, mobile functionality for the website as well. So, designing it in such a way that not only it works, when you're on your laptop, but it works well with mobile devices. And so we're trying to kind of cover all of our bases. So, and I think just comments that early on came from the marketing group was, let's do something that, in a perfect world, if we had an unlimited budget, we'd be doing something to get a different level, but at least to make sure at this point that what we end up with is a result that doesn't just sort of get us where people are, but takes us that one little step beyond. And so it will be I think the design and functionality of that, and certainly with the GIS, everything we hoped for and more. So I could just keep going, right?
Please.
Okay.
Segues are unbelievable today.
It's never been this smooth.
So I have yet to, and it'll probably happen today, if not tomorrow, but I've got the summaries, the recap from our last meeting, so I'll get those out to you guys as I normally do. And the programs committee, who is working on the tax abatement stuff, so we'll talk about that when we get to that aspect of it, is also continuing their work on the project evaluation framework for the EDC. So Deb Bernard is, if not already gotten to Hiram, but passed along and got some feedback during the last meeting of that group, some ideas around that. So I think they're pretty close to refining that down, and I would anticipate in December, if not January, we'd be back in front of you guys. It's just a matter of the timing of our meeting to your meeting, so it may be January on that. And then the process group, we had some lively discussion around orientation and training at our meeting. Yeah, which is good. Like we said, we were kind of putting it all out there. We want to talk about helping folks through the process as they become board members, and setting expectations for people so that they know, in their volunteer service, the kind of things that they need to do to be a very good and educated and well-informed board member. So They too, I think, are very close with their recommendations on that. And again, we've got a lot of good feedback, so they'll be moving forward with the next steps on that. And the marketing group, we talked about the website, work with them. The virtual town hall was a big part of our last discussion, but we did also talk about, and we haven't lost sight of that core statement that we first started with when the task force got together, that came initially right out of that marketing study. And I think, we can refocus our work on that. So as we talk about branding the website and some of the messaging, that is what we provide to whomever it is that's going to be putting the website together, that there's some consistent messaging with that. So we're going to be back at work on that next meeting.
And on that marketing concept, there are things going on in town and good news, and you do see them in the local papers. Is there any discussion for a plan to promote those good things, whether they be programs or tax abatement, to get them to a more regional, national level? In other words, developing lists of brokers that you can send things to some of the site locator companies that we have contact information or database that's, hey, we just developed this, and blast it out there. Because I would think that's kind of the ground floor marketing that should be undertaken at some point as these different things occur.
Yeah, and it's funny, we try to segment this work out for the various groups, but at the same time they do cross over, because one of the things that the marketing group is going to be working on is going back to that strategic plan, economic strategic plan, and looking at the goals for the Economic Development Commission. And some of our conversation, and especially with Rick on Tuesday, was around, we're looking at sort of redesigning the website and reorganizing the information and adding some of the very things you're talking about, but we need to talk about how we're going to maintain that too. So there's that aspect of it. And then within the goals of the Economic Development Commission, the sustainability of sharing that information with people too. So it wouldn't just be the website, but what other vehicles are out there. I think, creating that list was part of some of the initial discussion that we had. We put together, a ton of things that the group could have been could be working on, and that may end up being one of those very things that comes out in terms of sort of the regular goals of the EDC. Because as I said, after 2 years we go away, and then we're designing this in a way that things that we're recommending aren't just created and handed over at that time, but have mechanisms for ongoing review and implementation.
On that note, how do we get Stephanie Reef to include economic development blurbs in the Simsbury Scoop newsletter that goes out to residents that's on the town page?
Just send them to us.
Yeah. I actually had a brief conversation with her, and we're talking about bringing the review of how she plays into all of this into the process. What role does she play in that? So, I think when we talk about website maintenance, the work of the Economic Development Commission, how Stephanie fits into that. So some of those discussions need to come out of, again, some of the things that we're going to make recommendations for ongoing implementation. So,
because I think it's important to keep the residents continually informed about these new projects that are getting approved, because not everybody spends the time to read all the minutes of all the commissions. And
Some of it's in the paper, some of the bigger things we get out in the paper, and that was my point. I think I see that more in the paper. Now talking the next level beyond, I read, there are probably some people that don't read the paper that may read that.
Yeah.
So you want to get it to as many areas or organizations, but it's developing the system.
right. Where does it go, and how do we get that information out?
Yeah, if there's something here that Hiram brings up, how does that get from here out there? And that's something we need to concern ourselves with moving forward.
I'm just thinking of Crew and other organizations, but I think, and we've done, obviously, New England Real Estate Journal.
Right.
And
but all that
there's-
stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I think once you, and Chris, you talked about even doing a newsletter for the Economic Development Commission, so I think you've got a lot of good ideas, but you have to make sure that as you, kind of pull them together, you have a mechanism to sustain those things. There might be a subcommittee of the Economic Development Commission that handles, marketing, and Stephanie's a part of that. So, that's some of what the task force and specifically marketing is going to work on once we get through the website stuff and sort of developing that core statement, and that's their next task. So.
Like GIS, when that button gets pushed.
Right. Should have a big party.
A ribbon cutting
Big-
ceremony for that.
I got a hat.
You can hover around a laptop.
I've got a hat, I've got confetti, don't worry.
So I
Big scissors.
I think in keeping
Big
with
finger.
the theme of, if I could talk this morning, good segues, tax abatement. Hiram, you're up.
Go for it.
Yeah.
This, I hope you've all seen a copy of the draft of where we are with the tax abatement and business development incentive policy. This is a policy that was created initially a number of years ago. The current policy, I think, is about 2 pages, maybe 3, fairly short, fairly sparse with regard to details and selection of different projects. So what I tried to do here was to be a little bit more specific about the types of things, for example, on the first page, types of businesses or industries that are targeted by the policy. So typical corporate headquarters, these are things that are allowed by under 12-65B of the statutes. Corporate headquarters, satellite offices. Somebody said, one of the comments so far was whether we should limit the size of some of these buildings. I'm not so sure that you necessarily want to do that in this policy. I think that probably will come through in a number of other different ways. But if somebody wanted to come in, for example, and build another Hartford building, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, maybe we'd have to talk about it. So I think putting a limit on it and saying, as far as the policy is concerned, that may not be the place to do that. Research and development, obviously, high-tech manufacturing facilities. The other things that we really want to make sure people understand is this is also aimed at expanding existing businesses. That's really important. As a matter of fact, the way the breaks or the tax abatements are set up is it favors existing business expansion. And so we're hopeful that it will have that effect as well.
And the prior one has, a lot of what has occurred under the older one was more business expansion as opposed to new businesses coming in.
The emphasis was really the same there as well. The breaks were 50-40-30 as opposed to 40-30-20 for new businesses. So the existing businesses were favored under that one as well. But this just states it right there. This 7 got a number of comments. Mixed-use development, which contains at least 50% of its floor area designated for commercial use, if combined with specific plan for timely, acceptable, sequential development of the entire site and located in the town center or an established village district. So there's a push there to try to get mixed use in those particular areas. Town center right now, obviously, we know where that is. That's been mapped and coded. Established village districts would be Weetag. Could be some other village districts as well, but it's not limited to those. Two existing areas, it could end up being, the North Village might end up having a village district as well. So we need to work that out. But if it did become a village district and was adopted as a village district, that could also qualify as well. There was a comment by somebody that 50% was a number that was too high, that it should be 25%. So give that some thought and see what you think, whether that would have an adverse or positive impact in terms of what you want to see. If you think of it as a 4-story building, somebody might say, well, we don't want half that building to be residential. We want only 25% of it, or we want 75% of it to be residential, 25% commercial. Whatever that mix is, I'm not sure that 50% is the right number. It's a number that I think will work, but if some people have better ideas and a better rationale, I'm more than happy to hear that and put that into the mix as well.
Would that, on that point, the percentage, whatever it may be, would that be if it was an existing area or location, would it be the additional space and the percentage based on that? Or would it be the percentage of the entire, what it had previously existed with the addition? You know what I mean?
It's going to be interesting. I think that's a really good area, Lou, where some creative thinking would take place there. I think if the project really hangs together and is well designed, somebody could make an argument for that 50%, including some of the existing that's already there.
Right.
I think that could really work out well. And the reason I think that in some of these things, you might say, well, that's a little vague, we don't know what it means. Well, that's really on purpose. We want to give the Business Development Committee and this committee and the Board of Selectmen some flexibility in terms of what they think is appropriate. There are 3 opportunities there for people to say, yeah, we like this, or no, we don't. And so the Board of Selectmen gets the ultimate decision, but we want to have some flexibility there so that there can be a lot of discussion around those exact things. I think that's a really, really good question.
Well, would the commercial aspect of the Greenberg project be applicable there?
One of the reasons this says a specific plan for timely, acceptable, sequential development is that people were thinking about that at the same time. And they said, look, is this just a plan that's going to build some apartments and nothing else is going to happen there? Or do we really have a plan that's going to show how the rest of the project is going to lay out as well? So the thinking about how mixed-use projects could come together and whether they would include this plan for the development of the rest of the property could definitely fit into this there. So that specific, I want to be careful how much you say about that particular parcel because the zoning commission hasn't decided it yet, but I think that could be considered under this particular.
So the timing aspect of things on when an applicant makes presentation of what to become qualified or whatever it is, how would the timing work on that?
These are set up so that people would come in before the development takes place. So they would know before the development is actually proposed, we'd have some sketch plans and we have some ideas, but before they went through all the whole application process and spent $250,000, $350,000 to develop a set of plans, which is not hard to do today, we would know whether they're going to be eligible for one of these tax abatements or not.
So before approval's granted by, let's say, zoning, they would have a feel that they're going to be approved under this plan, or disapproved.
Yeah, one of the things that we've done in the last few years is to encourage developers to come in and make informal presentations to the commissions, both design review, this commission, the zoning commission. And they like that because they don't have to spend a ton of money on details before they find out, do people really hate this thing or do they think it's okay to move forward? So this is going to be a process where everybody's going to get a sort of an early on shot at saying what they think about it. And I think then a developer, maybe it's a local person, maybe it's not, but they'll get an idea as to whether the project is going to be acceptable or not early on.
But they won't know numbers because it's based on value after the CO, right?
Well, it's based on a value, final value, but one of the things that's in here, I'll get to in a few moments, is this deal doesn't become final until an actual contract is worked out between the town attorney and the developer. It has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen, but that contract...
Would that contract be pre-CO or after the CO?
It would have to be before the CO, but the abatement wouldn't take place until after the CO is issued.
Okay, because didn't we have that issue of not knowing at one point what the value of the project would be, the assessed value, so they couldn't know what amount of savings they would have.
And that's why there's a little bit of, as you look at these things, there's a little bit of flexibility, Lou, I think, in terms of saying, yeah, we like this project, we like this particular aspect, and we think this is good to go forward, it fits into this criteria, we provided all the information we need. The exact details of that are going to be worked out in that contract.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a sequential thing, it's baby steps for everybody, for the town and the developer. So before anybody gets in over their head, we'll all know what it's going to look like and whether it's going to go forward or not. So I think one thing we don't have right now is that contract, and that's an important thing. Yeah.
Are there, I know it's, the town grand list, but are there any state constraints on what individual towns can do in abatements?
Yeah, that 12-65B, that statute is what governs this whole thing. And I asked the town attorney a while ago to tell me to look at this and see whether we're in keeping with the guidelines for how much money needs to be expended and how much tax abatement we can grant. Some people have said that the abatements that we proposed here require too much of input from the developer. For example, the lowest input is $1 million. There's another one for $1.5 million. And somebody said, well, that's too much. We should lower that. Well, I'm not sure if everybody feels that way or not, but I've asked the town attorney to take a look at 1265B and find out, does the statute require us to require that much investment before we grant a certain amount of abatement. And so we'll have that answer very shortly.
Is there a minimum, maximum that they insist upon? What I'm concerned about or thinking is inevitable, we go, okay, everything is met the criteria, 50, 40, 30, whatever it might be. Avon goes like, how about 55? You know, where is it? I don't think the state wants a bidding war going on. Is there any minimum, maximum?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and this, what I did and further on is put an exact chart that addresses that very issue together, so that hopefully we won't get into that. We know that people would much rather relocate here or expand here than they would in Avon. That's our basic thought to begin with, so we hope that that won't become a problem.
Hiram, on that 1.5 million, is that a minimum, or was that just for priority consideration? The million, million and a half, and two, is that million, million and a half in investment, or the increase in assessed value?
Yeah, at least substantial impact will be defined as contributing at least an additional $1.5 million in real estate value to the grant list. Yeah.
Now, so is that just to make it a priority in consideration, thereby eliminating someone who puts $1 million in, or added to the grand list?
Well, I think it says that that's, you're right, exactly right, Lou. That would be receive a priority. In other words...
So we're not eliminating someone who does a smaller project that results in, $800,000 of an expansion.
That's right.
Okay.
And I think that what we may...
That came up at our Chamber of Government Affairs.
And I think what we may end up with is even another chart, or perhaps just another number here in this particular section, talking about those lesser amounts that could be enough to fit that in the chart later on. But that's, a couple of people have said that so far, so that's very possible.
I was just going to add, and we were, Hiram made a presentation to Main Street, and we're going to actually be at the Chamber in December because of Veterans Day on Tuesday, and we put a press release out. So we're getting as much feedback as we can from the public, but so a lot of that discussion at Main Street was around existing businesses. So, it's not that you certainly want to encourage that growth and you don't want to discourage it.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Just to clarify, Hiram, this is basically commercial, so if someone comes in with a straight apartment complex, that would not qualify under this, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that, the Business Development Committee found, I think, difficult to deal with in some recent applications. And we want to be clear with everybody. We have a significant number of apartments going up right now, and more proposed, frankly. And long term, I think, I'm convinced, and lots of studies bear this out, that unless you get people in the town and feet on the street, there's not going to be any additional demand for any retail services, goods and services either. So, it's the cart before the horse thing. We want to make sure that we do get those people to come to town. And whether they all work here or not, we hope that a lot of them do. We hope the businesses flourish because of that.
But under the intent right now, a straight apartment complex of any size would not qualify, right?
That's right. I would discourage someone from applying for that, for a straight apartment
Well,
complex.
discouraged, but I mean, the intent of this is to disqualify it, right?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
what I mean by that, Dave, is when they come in for their initial discussions with staff, we sit down with them and we say, this looks like it fits into the regulation, or we say, you really got to be adventuresome to go ahead with this because we don't think it's going to fly. So we tell them, and most people pay a lot of attention to that, because we think that the commissions will listen to us as well. So again,
I'd like to make a point. On the residential, the state statute does allow for residential for the apartments. I would argue that if we're looking at the downtown district or, say, the North Village, if we're trying to encourage more people to be here, we don't have any housing downtown yet, then maybe we should look at that as a special case. I just think about it.
one of the things
My zone, yes.
on page 2, that the underlined at the bottom, any proposed abatements or incentives are subject to final approval of the Board of Selectmen upon recommendation from the Business Development Committee. So there's no question that the Board of Selectmen, just as before, gets final approval. It could go through all the boards and commissions, and everybody could say we love it. If the Board of Selectmen, for some reason, decides that that's not appropriate, then it's their decision. That's the way it works.
Another question?
Yep, sure.
On page 2, under the town is interested in attracting businesses, number 5, preserve a historic site. I'm trying to think of how that would play. Was there anything in mind with regard to that, or?
You know, we talked a lot about this when we did the town center, Lou. There are some historic buildings. There are buildings that have national plaque, for example, but they're not part of a local historic district. So it might be an addition to an existing historic building that we want to preserve that building, but add on to that building. So a business might say, you know, we really like that building, but that's not big enough for us. We're going to tear it down. And say, no, we don't want you to tear it down, but we would allow you to expand. As a matter of fact, we'll make it more attractive by a possible abatement.
Okay.
So you can expand that building, keep the face on it. It looks nice in the front, but they've got the room that they need to operate in the back office. That's the kind of thing we think will work there.
That could be a big can of worms, too.
Most things I deal with are.
What's going on?
He said most things I deal with are.
So I understand. No question about it. But
Well, you can make this thing too inclusive or exclusive, you know?
Well,
Careful.
well, we think this is important because of the character of the town, Dave. I think we think that there's
That's
not...
what they found when they put the big historic district in over in Weetide, and it's caused a big ruckus, as you know. So,
Well, people always have,
I
historic
know.
preservation's always controversial. People think it's great, people think it's not so great, but we need to work with it because it is an integral part of the town. We think, yeah, sure.
Just to reiterate what you and Rich just had mentioned, I feel strongly about as well. One of the strong ideas is to increase the traffic in front of the the community here, business community here, and the idea of we want housing in downtown. If I'm a developer, I say it's probably a little more expensive in land. We don't have really too much to go on it, but you're dealing now in incentives. So incentives make it much more possible to take that economic risk to do it. And I think while you're drafting this, it's an opportunity to get the zones that we want to have residential, to stimulate the local businesses, to do that now.
Yeah, I think that's true. I was at a meeting on tips this week, actually, that the Connecticut Main Street put on. They basically, one of the people was there from Iowa, and Iowa, they have a really incredible incentive program. And one of the themes that they have is you get what you incent.
Yeah.
People are going to come and look at what you've got.
Your price is a great allocator.
Absolutely, no question about that. So we're very concerned about how this is going to be implemented. We want everybody to take a close look at it so we get the final document in pretty good shape to do just those kinds of things. Exactly.
That'd be great.
So,
On page 3, under item 5, under business development incentive, it says applicants must be committed to make a significant investment in new. Will that then refer back to the $1.5 million?
new or renovated. That's one of those things, significant investment. That may come back to the things Rich was just talking about with regard to a lesser investment getting a lesser abatement, something like that.
So we want to keep it flexible.
Yeah, I think that significant investment is going to be something that the Business Development Committee, this committee and the Board of Selectmen are going to decide whether, yeah, that's significant, we think that's good. You know, if they saw a project for a nuclear reactor, they probably would say, yeah, that's significant, but it's not something we want. On the other hand, a company that blows things up
the
now
explosive.
That's a marijuana plant, right?
I like
So those are on business development incentive minimum requirements. Those are minimums. They're not tremendously difficult to meet. We think that they're all good things. The fact that your taxes are paid, that you don't have any environmental violations, projects need to meet objectives that are identified in plans of conservation and development. They're not opposed to that, but we think all those things are important.
I have a quick question. On page 3, at the number 5 at the top, where the application, the Director of Finance has to determine that they have a solid financial base.
Yeah.
That seems, maybe it's intentional, very subjective, and many of these companies are potentially privately held companies. What's their incentive? Is there going to be a requirement for them to hand over financials in order for the Director of Finance to determine that? And do they have the time and qualifications to, I just think it's a can of worms. how you determine that.
I think that the Director of Finance would be a better person to answer that, Chris, but I think what we typically would probably see would be, if it's a private company or it's closely held or whatever, they can talk to the Director of Finance and they can give him whatever information or her whatever information they want to make their case. They just need to feel comfortable with it, that we're not dealing with somebody who was, in California last week, now they're operating in New Orleans, and now they're in Boston. We just need to know a little bit about their stability and whether they have, we need to be able to tell the Board of Selectmen and the Business Development Community, yeah, this is a good company, they've grown, 60% in the last 25 minutes, or whatever the situation is. Today, a lot of these things are difficult. There's a lot of startups that are doing just great. There's no question about that. And we think that's encouraging. We hope to encourage some of those to come here. So exactly how that information is going to be transmitted, and I'm still waiting for comments back from the Director of Finance to see whether they like that or not. But we need to have some way to gauge that, and I would much rather have the Director of Finance do that than have me do it. I think he or she's the proper person.
And it's the assumption that they'll have a certain set of criteria that he's going to kind of check off that they,
I would think, this is a quid pro quo document, if they're looking for an abatement, we want to know a little bit about you. Why should we give you this money? They need to tell us a little bit about it, and we think that's a fair request. So, again, is environmental violation, no environmental violations, clear benefit to the town, and so on.
Would this apply to a current project that has been approved but not started yet? Is this retroactive? So if there's a mixed-use development that falls under these guidelines, that a shovel hasn't been in the ground yet and it's at its infancy, can they go back and apply for this, or is this for only projects that are brought forward from the time that this is approved going forward?
I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that yet. I would have to say, I think it depends if it truly does fit into this category and hasn't been started yet. If the reason it hasn't started is because they needed some little abatement, that might be one thing that would work out. I would encourage anybody involved with a project like that to come in and talk to us to figure out whether that would fit or not, and whether we can make a good case to the Business Development Committee and to the Board of Selectmen, whether we feel comfortable moving that forward. Are we saying, just giving these people that, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 tax break, is that going to make a difference? If that does, and that's why it hasn't gone forward, how close to the edge are we really here with this particular group? So we
do have a program at this point. There is an existing abatement program, so if that's important, there at least should be in that game.
Yeah.
I don't know how the numbers work out between one or the other, the new versus old, but it should at least be in that part.
And I was going to say, I think that's the difference between the current policy and this one that's being reviewed and proposed, because and just to Alan's point, you're incentivizing people to come in. So, part of it is if someone's already here or, been approved to be here and, their business model is good to go, and this goes back to some of the real initial basic conversations that the task force has had, and is an abatement program necessary, period? We talked through a lot of that stuff to say, it's important when you talk about what your neighbor has and being competitive within the economic development arena to have the option to award this or not. If you don't have the policy, you don't have the option. And so I think that's...
In the past, how many roughly abatements have we granted?
About 8.
About 8. Over what period of time?
6 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Could I move it, some people feel similarly as myself, and what Richard and Hiram have echoed, the EDC gives a approval for including zoning, you find the best words, incentives to bring housing to certain parts, the downtown area, say, for example, to incentivize it, to add that to our total tax abatement program, deliberately.
Yeah. I think that was one of the reasons, Alan, that I really wanted that number 7, that 50% mixed use thing there. I wanted to see and I got some pushback already from people that say, we don't want any more housing. Well, I think they need to look at the broad picture in terms of what makes things go. And if you don't have housing, it's going to be very sterile streets after 5 o'clock.
Well, could I move that the EDC endorse that program?
Well, why don't I finish, and I hope you endorse the whole thing. But up to you, I'm not trying to tell you, I'm not, I shouldn't say that.
No, I mean, you sort of included it as you suggest in your report.
There are other agreements, number 14, for example, on page 4 is very important. If the benefits were obtained fraudulently, and then 13 above it, or if the town relocates, or it becomes delinquent in taxes, or closes, or goes bankrupt, there's a clawback provision in this, and that's why the contract is important. We don't have that right now, frankly, and some of the abatements that have been approved, those people could probably walk, with no repercussions. So we want to tighten that up a little bit.
Is a lien placed on these properties for?
That'd be up to the town attorney. I don't know how that would work. Lou
But
probably-
for the initial abatement, a lien is not placed?
No,
Okay,
that's not the proposal.
okay.
This chart, the types of assistance available, this gets into the point where what I've tried to do here is tie several things together. And let me start first of all with the tax abatement part of it. The project location, initially there are 3 different locations that are cited here, and this could expand or contract depending upon how the final comments go. The abatements could take place for projects that are in an existing business or industrial zone. So lots of people were concerned a while ago about our industrial land disappearing and being converted to a PAD or some other use. Town engineer did an analysis a while ago, and I think I may have mentioned to this commission that we still have enough industrial land available at this time to build something between 11 and 18 more Hartfords. There's a lot of industrial land available. I mean, it's huge. So people don't see it or think about it, but the same square footage could fit on the amount of industrial land that we currently have available. So there's plenty of industrial. So the abatements, that is the period of abatement in those areas would be a minimum of 3 years to a maximum of 7 years. This is in keeping with the statute. And the maximum percentage for an existing business could be as high as 50%, and then it goes down to 20% if it's a 7-year abatement. So that's basically how that scale would work. The maximum number of years is not automatic either. So for example, if the Business Development Committee felt that there's a reason for not granting 7 years, that we want to grant 5 years, or we want to grant 3 years, there's some flexibility there that the Business Development Committee, after looking at all this information that they get, can make that determination, that judgment. They're not locked into saying, okay, somebody applied, we have to give them this. We want to give them some flexibility. Special focus conditions, we would like to see in those areas high-quality development. Now, somebody said before, what does that mean? What do we mean by high quality? That's a term where we need to figure out, do we need to define it, or should we leave it alone and let the Business Development Committee and Board of Selectmen and this committee decide? So we probably do not want to see a whole series of metal buildings that sell tires in North Village. That might not be determined to be high quality, but do we want to see an office building that's got all marble in the front of it? There's a big difference, obviously. So I don't know exactly what that means yet, but I think that we maybe talk about it and come to whether we need a definition of that or not. Second category is existing or proposed zone allowing mixed use, including target industries only in specified locations. And that was things that we talked about the town center before we talked about village districts. Essentially, that's what that would aim toward. 3 years minimum to a 5 years maximum. There's a lot of density already that's provided in the town center code and in the village district, so we may not have to give a 7-year abatement to those. Again, existing businesses could be maximum of 50% abatement down to 30%, new businesses 40 down to 20%. And a specific mix of uses, and that goes back to the 50% thing we talked about before, that would apply to something like that. And then the last category is town center or adopted village district, 3 years minimum to 7 years maximum. Again, same thing, existing businesses, new businesses. The scale and the quality of design is critical in those districts. We want to make sure that they look nice. That's essentially it for tax abatement. What I also tried to do in this document was tie together other programs that we've had in the past that have sort of gone by the wayside for one reason or another that haven't been used to much effect lately. Waiving or reduction of any town permit fees for targeted businesses and industries. And this, again, is a number where there's a 50% possible waiver for permit fees for businesses that may come in that apply for that. The development, for example, up at Dorset Crossing, those apartments contributed a lot to the building permit numbers for that particular month when those permits were pulled.
And that's something I don't know if people realize how expensive some of that permitting, if you could kind of explain.
Yeah.
Because those numbers are significant.
It's a little over $14 per $1,000 worth of valuation, so it can get expensive.
Yeah.
So if you've
That's an
got a
expensive number.
multi-million-dollar project, you're talking about some serious fees.
Well, take the project up there right now, which is gonna have 168 apartments. It's probably, I don't know, $30 million project or something. It's big.
It's big. yeah.
So what were the permitting
$14
fees
per
of that?
thousand?
You know, I don't have that number, Dave, I can get you that number.
Oh, I'd love
But
to
it
know
was-
that number.
But it was a significant number.
Well, if you do a $5 million project,
Yeah.
what would the permit fees be? It's 14 per
It was
thousand?
$14 per thousand, so.
That'd be what, $90,000?
So in relative
Yeah.
terms,
Some
I should
serious
just say,
money.
at our last Board of Selectmen meeting, the Director of Finance came in and gave us a financial update. And we basically have an extra $200,000, I think, in permit fees over last year. Or I shouldn't say, as was proposed budgeted, that we thought would be coming in.
So a big hunk of that probably came from the Giorgio project,
Yeah,
eh?
yeah.
Yes, it did.
So needless to say, there's a lot going on. So if you think in relative terms of offering to, reduce some of that, where we are right now, we're currently doing pretty well. And so if that trend continues and then we offer things like this, we're still okay. In terms
That's
of-
a one-shot deal, though. It's a little different than this other stuff we're
It
talking
is,
about.
it definitely is,
Yeah.
it definitely
Yeah.
is.
But if it's
Yeah.
enough to get some of these folks over the hump.
The
that's
combo,
good.
but the reason I bring it up is it is a significant number. People may not realize that little paragraph
Yeah,
is
that's a lot of money.
it's a big number up front. It's part of your upfront cost
Right.
before people are actually there.
That's right. I think the day that those people came in and pulled their permits, the finance director came in and asked me if we had made a mistake. That's what
Well, it's true, that's
It was
a big
it was
deal.
good. Yeah, absolutely. It was unusual. And we expect, by the way, a couple more of those to come through pretty shortly, so we'll see what happens with that. The third and final part of this program that I put together is an infrastructure rebate program. That's a program that we had a while ago and hasn't been funded for a while. But I think that this is important because what we can get is public infrastructure, sewers, sidewalks, curbs, things that the public would benefit from, put in for a lesser cost than it would cost the town to put in by themselves. So the maximum percentage of rebate for these things would be 50%. And again, this is subject to discretion of the town engineer based upon the actual cost, based upon how desirable that is, whether it's brick sidewalks or granite curbs or whatever it happens to be, sewer lines, gas lines, infrastructure, public infrastructure that's going to benefit the public. That really doesn't matter whether someone's going to leave town, 2 or 3 years later or not, that's going to stay. And so that's infrastructure that we think we can get those infrastructure improvements made for half price. Why not? Why not do that? And so it's a public-private partnership with the developer. We think that that's important to do.
So it would be a rebate on their tax bill for
It would actually-
50% of the cost?
This would actually be a rebate on the actual expenditures. They would actually put those things in, apply to the town engineer for a rebate.
We used to have a program.
The town would pay,
Would rebate them, yeah.
rebate the money, it's not a reduction in tax, just they're getting a check for half of it.
So
Okay. Good.
part of,
Yeah.
I was going to say, as we sort of conclude and talk about the timing of all of this, I think it's extremely important as we're heading into the budget season, because we used to have an infrastructure program. I think we were kicking around a number, I think it was about $500,000, and there were projects like Fiddler's Green and Holloways and different things that came in, and the town benefited from that. Unlike the abatement, you don't have the money yet, you're abating a portion of that you would receive. With the infrastructure program, obviously you have to put the money in the, you have to fund it. And so as we enter this year's budget cycle, it'll be important for you guys to give that feedback. And as Hiram says, if you're endorsing the tax abatement and business incentive plan, that, maybe you have some discussions around what you think would be an appropriate recommendation to fund that infrastructure program.
Because as an example of that, if you talk about Herman Drive, Phone On, they had come in years ago with regard to sewer, that it wasn't up that far, if I recall, so this type of program, if they were going to bring the sewer up to that area and it had a greater public function for the other people on Herman Drive area, they could get half the cost.
Yeah, and up to.
Up to.
Up to.
So what
But
kind of,
that gets into the assessed valuation of the property. So you get some of that back later on, eh?
Right, correct. Yeah, it's assessed higher because of the
Sure.
You do. I mean, there are so many paybacks for this type of investment, and this is really an investment, that's the way I look at it. It's not a giveaway program. It really is an investment. We would like companies to come here that are interested in the town, like to stay here and flourish, obviously. So we want to make it as easy as possible. But we think by putting all those three tools together, the abatement, the permit fee possible reduction, the infrastructure rebate program, that we have a good little package that'll really make some difference. Just
Didn't they also at Herman Drive, didn't they come in years ago talking about the lack of internet?
Internet. I was just thinking that when you said that,
And that
yeah.
would be another example of it,
Yeah.
would benefit a large area.
That even happened actually locally when we were getting in on West Street and
Yep.
we didn't have Comcast. And so, we're saying, okay, well, if we wanted to get it,
Yep.
we were talking to the folks next door, if we got it, you guys want it, would you use it? So, yeah, stuff, right along that line, I think is.
This doesn't talk about, for a mixed-use development, though, any incentives for hookup fees, though, correct?
No, not necessarily, no.
So the hookup fees, yeah, I mean, this is just bringing the sewer line in, this has nothing to do with the
Or other
hookup
things,
costs.
yeah.
I'm actually tempted to avoid stepping on any landmines.
I know, I'm just
we've already
asking.
been there.
I think that's a good question.
Do we have any guidance as to what the Board of Selectmen would want to use for a funding target?
We have not had any of those discussions, and I think that, as I said, will come with bringing this recommendation back. So just as I spoke about who we were meeting with and the timing associated with that, so the task force meets again on the 20th, next Thursday. We'll be talking about, just as we are here, reviewing the program, getting their feedback. We'll be at the chamber on the 10th, and then the idea is that we'll bring this all back to the task force in their December meeting to then bring forward to you guys and the Board of Selectmen. So I would imagine in January we'll have this all sewn up, and but I would encourage you guys to if you research and look into other towns and what they may offer, or go back to the program we had if you think it should be funded at that level. But
Would we be looking at any of the informal discussions we've had with people who have approached the town about development as a guide to say potentially we could have one or two or three, and if we were to look at that
How much would it cost?
infrastructure, how much could we do there? Would that be some sort of on an annual basis?
This question ties in exactly to one of the other things the task force is working on. That's that project evaluation framework that we're working on. And that would give this board the ability to say, oh, okay, you have these various things as part of your project. How does that fit into our abatement program? That's exactly how they fit together. Perfect.
And just a logistical timing, because it always happens, we have our December meeting, and then our January meeting is usually the day or two before Hiram wants the budget to come in. So some of the under items for our budget, or what we request, is usually due that January meeting. I think, and Hiram, correct me if I'm wrong, the recommendations could probably go into our February meeting. In other words, if we say we recommend there be an incentive, an infrastructure rebate program, and that should be funded, we don't need to know that in January, do we?
I don't know. I'm hoping to get this tied up as soon as I can, Lou, so I'll get it to you as quickly as I
Right.
can. And I'm also happy, as soon as I find out whatever the budget due dates are, I'll let you know that as well, so we can figure out how that's going to work.
Because we only get, it always comes up upon us quickly, and we need to have some ideas and goals of things we want to promote. Some may fall within our budget, some may fall not necessarily within our budget, but should be something that the EDC is truly promoting to be in the budget.
You suggesting that that the EDC's budget's gonna fund some of this stuff?
No. What I'm saying is, the budgetary cycle gets going in January.
Right.
And whatever's within our budget, we usually have to have in January. This type of program would probably be a recommendation from us. And I was just trying to get some timing as to whether we'd have to recommend it by January.
15-16 budget year, right?
Yes.
Funding this infrastructure program.
Yeah.
I think
But that starts in January, right?
Discussion?
Yeah, there was
I think
mention
as
at the
you
Board of Selectmen
described
meeting that it would be December, departments would be getting their budgets in December, they would be due in January. There was no specific date given, but
Yeah, so
you're
due in
exactly right.
January.
It's usually, I think, it's been the Friday.
It's after, the day after our meeting. I used to have to do it all the
Yeah,
time.
it usually is.
Yeah,
And
whatever
you
our
guys-
meeting is, that Friday they're due.
Yeah, so you guys meet on the 8th.
So it's probably gonna be the 9th or the following week.
Yeah, and actually, it might work in your favor this year because January 1 falls on a Thursday, so that,
Yeah, I
that
get
may be
the
the 16th, but I think it's important that you do know that. And actually, as I look here to the timing of the task force December's meeting and your December meeting, we'll talk about that when we meet next Thursday, so we're sure that we can move this through and also give Hiram at least a couple of days to.
So there's two aspects. There's deciding what we request from an economic development commission budget, which is what we normally do, and submitting that. But then there's also, what do we want to promote, recommend, support to the town that should be in the budget that may not be in our budget? For example, an infrastructure rebate program.
So you're saying it should be done ideally on Jan 8? one way or
Well,
the
I
other.
know the budget has to be done then, that we're gonna request. I'm asking the question, maybe we get to February with the recommendations, because it's gonna take a process, and then there are budget workshops and so on and so forth, but, so we might get an extra reprieve for things we want to promote or recommend. But I think in both instances, we have to really start honing in on it
I wouldn't
now.
think-
Because there are some, like this is a significant deal, and the EDC should take a lead in that regard. And
I definitely feel you should.
Right, so you only, at the most, you probably have December's meeting, January's meeting, maybe till February 1st, or February.
I was gonna say, I wouldn't even, you're probably not gonna be able to wait till then. So in other words, the
Yeah.
Hiram's budget will be due in January, and it should come with it EDC's budget recommendations along with your endorsement of anything else that impacts the
Right.
budget. Because then, I mean, all that stuff is gonna get pulled in at the same time to create the first selectmen's budget. So if you wait till February, you're not gonna be in on that first round.
We should
So-
put this on our agenda for December or January?
December.
Both.
And you might want to consider a special meeting, and
Yeah.
I was gonna say, we can talk about sort of timing of all this specific to the tax abatement stuff.
I'm saying, we could spend thousands of hours dotting the i's and crossing the t's, but I think as spelled out with these three prongs, incentive tax, the permit reduction, and the infrastructure rebate, that's pretty good three stools to stand on,
I think so. I think it'll be very helpful. I think after that, the steps are all laid out as to how it proceeds, and I think that'll help everybody, and applicants and the BDC, of figuring out how this program works. It's important to note, and I want to underline again, in order for the incentives to become official, the Board of Selectmen must approve the final development incentive in contract form by majority vote. So that's a link that we don't have now, that really sort of ties all this stuff up nice and neatly. The town attorney will have been a part of that whole process, Board of Selectmen will have been a part of that process. I think it gives us a tremendous amount of
But I'd like
emphasis.
to see the EDC recommendation for this program, sort of as stated, without the i's and t's dotted and crossed, going to the Board of Selectmen as endorsed by the EDC.
Yeah, that is actually one of the things that we put in here, Alan. It's definitely in there, and a recommendation from this board would be important. That's why we think that project evaluation framework would help you sort of decide, okay, yeah, we think that meets A, C, D, and F, and we recommend approval because of that, and whatever.
I think Alan might be saying, you're saying endorsing this policy, not
policy.
being within the process of the policy, that you would have an endorsement for a
Right.
project. You're saying
Right.
you want endorsement of the policy, the EDC to endorse the policy.
Well-
And that's why, we came here today expressly to have you guys look at this, provide comment, and then, yes, we want your endorsement
Yes.
of the policy. The Economic Development Task Force is going to work to refine that to also endorse the policy. So that's, the premise
Well,
behind this.
I had a couple of highlights that I talked about in terms of endorsing it, is what you're talking about.
Excuse me, could I ask one question germane to this?
You just asked one, you can ask two now.
Dave, the big Y.
No. I'm interested this proposal that we're going to consider at some point down the road, how does it stack up compared to our neighbors and what they currently have? Do we have some feel for that?
I've tried to talk to many of them, and basically what they all use is the same statute. How they construct their program is generally not typically available in terms of how they do it. They have a lot of discussions, the Board of Selectmen meets with people and they make a determination, and then they decide what they're going to do. I've asked probably half a dozen of them to send me what they do or their programs. I've not gotten any responses at all. So how we created this was basically a blend of our current program that we have and the other things that are available to us under the law. And the other communities do the same thing. To the extent to which they do it, Windsor, for example, might do a lot more. I'm sure they probably do. We actually have some people that say, we don't need this at all. We just don't need this. People are going to come here because they want to come here. I don't think that's the current reality, but I think that we need to figure out how to balance that amongst the other towns.
I think it's a necessity to be in the game with people that are looking at a number of different areas. Will it change the game? Will this one factor change someone's decision? Probably not. But this, along with a combination of others, would certainly do that. I think the more arrows in the quiver you have, the better off and the better chances you have.
This changes the price point.
It's not tools and
Totally.
tool left anymore.
Totally changes the price point for a decision to come in here or not. And I think that's a pretty important thing.
Sure. Sure. What is this? Go ahead. What I was going to say was, I thought, my opinion and what I would suggest is that this is something that the EDC endorses. There have been a couple of comments that we probably can discuss. One was the percentage of commercial use. One was in a particular zone. Do you want any apartment residential? The other was the minimums. If there is a minimum, or that it should get down to the smaller existing businesses. And I think those are the comments that I heard. I don't know if there was another one, and I don't know if you want to put those on and discuss them at our next meeting, discuss them now.
Well, in the interest of time, I'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting so that people have time to go through this and come up with their questions and specific things, and we'll allocate them.
So I just want to chime back.
Next meeting is December.
Yeah. So the timing is, what we outlined, what I was just outlining was we would like your comments back to Hiram. So the discussion.
Now?
Yeah. I mean, you had the
So we
time
should
to
do it now.
review. Hiram can receive your comments. He's receiving them from Main Street, from Chamber. He's going to cull all those together. And at the 10th, and the meeting, the 10th, or I should say the December meeting, we want to come back with what would be a draft document for endorsement.
Your group is going to tweak it, we're going to tweak it, and the end policy is, going to be somewhere, obviously,
can only say this
amalgam
once,
of it.
but get it right.
Right.
So I think, as stated, the broad brushstrokes, I'd like to put it to a vote.
Well, I'll make a motion that the Economic Development Commission recommend and support this tax abatement program with a couple of provisions that we'd like to see potentially changed, revised, I would say. One being page 2 at the top, paragraph 7, whether it's 50% of commercial space, it should be dropped slightly lower. 2, that on page 2, paragraph 2 and 3, that it be clarified that those are not minimum amounts, and that there will be a program available to businesses that are adding less than $1 million in value, or less than $1.5 million if it's a new area. So if that could be clarified, so it's not a barrier to entry. And to add a clause that this program potentially be used in very specific zones or locations where residential apartments may be desired by the town. Is there anything else?
I second that motion.
I can't vote for the third one, because this whole apartment issue is a major, major issue that's going on in the town, because it changes the whole demographics of the community. And whether we should be incentivizing that or not incentivizing it, I really don't know, but I'd want more information before I'd support that.
So
That's just what I
you
want.
do you support everything but that last?
Well, the concept, I think, is fine, because it's really fluff and duff at this point, you know? And whether it's 50% or 48%, who cares, really, you know? So, but the fundamental issue is what impact might this have on the whole community? And so that's why, that to me is the essence of the issue here, you know?
But the charrette has identified areas in the town center that should be residential units. And I think that what Lou was proposing is consistent, and what you're talking about is consistent with what the charrette
Right.
is.
Sale, man.
Yep.
Am I correct?
Yeah, I would tell you too that we just finished, staff in our department just finished a housing report. It's 28 pages. It takes the national picture, the regional picture, and the Simsbury picture down to a very specific level with regard to housing. And so it's done and ready to go. I just need the chairman of the zoning commission to tell me I can release it, and I'll have that out to you very shortly. So it addresses all these questions, and it's a really positive, a very nice positive look at the whole apartment.
I would just throw too in, Dave, that we had Yvonne Klein, the Commissioner of Housing, come out to the task force and speak at length in regards to, sort of the missing piece in the puzzle for Simsbury in terms of housing, and that is 1- and 2-bedroom units. And it helps not only, and I say complete the circle, because we're missing that stock of housing for millennials, and we're missing it for people who are looking to downsize for their homes. So it creates what really is needed, and as I said, completes that circle. So that, along with the idea that the charrette is there and has that basis for that need, and we want to, specifically in areas like the town center, encourage folks to live there so that the businesses can thrive.
So Lou, do you want to amend that last piece to say in the town center zone and villages?
I wouldn't, I just said very specific
zones.
places. We're gonna let the other people decide what that is, and other people are gonna have to look into it. We're just providing our recommendation at this point, that these be items that be reviewed and potentially revised or added. So we're not
It's a
you know,
general-
deciding.
a general-
It's a general comment, very specific. I don't know whether I'd want it in a village district, if you consider West Simsbury area. I don't know if you'd want it there. So, but in the town center, I get that concept. An apartment area in the town center is probably something that might work. Other places, I agree with you, it shouldn't be an incentive. So so at least Hiram in the task force have the areas that we think are of importance.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes.
Quick question. This document makes the Business Development Committee the recommender as opposed to EDC. Are they a permanent, ongoing structure like you are? In other words, if people come in, will there always be a Business Development Committee just like EDC? I'm just curious about.
Yeah, it was set up in our existing tax abatement program. The members of that, first selectman is the chairman of that committee, chairman of zoning, chairman of planning, or his designee, I believe.
I did have,
Finance, I'm sorry, finance.
I did have,
One member at large.
it was in here, that actually, they're appointed, the business development, but I think,
One number of these.
it says here, and I did have one question on this, this is on page 6 at the top, the remaining 4 members of the committee shall be appointed by the first selectman, and 1 member shall be chosen from each of the existing membership of EDC, Board of Finance, and Zoning.
Yeah.
Does that mean there's 5 members, the first selectman, and then 4, and then the first selectman decides which person from EDC, which person from...
This board decides, a chairman of EDC would decide whether he or she wants to sit or, yeah.
Right, okay, so it'd be the
And then-
individual commissions will put their person on.
That's
what-
That's how it is right now.
Yeah, that's the way it is now.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that changed it or not.
No, it's the same
Okay.
as it is now.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, explain to me, to your motion, we're talking on your motion, okay?
Yeah.
Why do we have to do this today? Why
Because they
can't we
want to
do-
incorporate the input from EDC into this draft document, and particularly getting to their next meeting, which is on when, Nancy?
December.
Thursday.
Our meeting's Thursday, and then Hiram's gonna be pulling in comments, but we...
So they're trying to get as much feedback.
Well, they're getting all the input now because they're hearing it.
Right.
So we don't have to have a formal vote on this as far as I'm concerned at this point in time.
Well, we don't,
I think we want to develop
Be
a
helpful
consensus.
to them and
If you
their
ask me to
plan.
vote, should we continue to explore what's going on and input to it? Yeah, I'm all for that. But I'm not for trying to lock this thing in place how we feel about it, because I don't know.
Then
I don't have
abstain or
enough
don't
information
vote
to
for
know.
it.
You can
I just
abstain.
know I
I
see
think-
a danger signal here, that's all.
Well, I think we'll vote.
Yeah,
You can
okay.
abstain, you can
Yeah.
decline, you can state why, and those comments will be taken to the
Jay's
next.
not here, so maybe I'll abstain.
In his great tradition. Hold the flag high.
See, he's rubbing off.
So, to wrap up, okay, so with that, do we have, anything else you'd like to add to that?
I don't second Lou's
You have a
motion.
second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All
I abstain.
abstain.
Oh,
So noted.
and the crowd roars.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
I had one other issue, and I had mentioned it to Mark, the Historical Society, and Lisa had mentioned it, is beginning discussions on what they're doing on their site, right in the center zone area, that I think is very interesting and could develop a nice hub. I think, Mark, you're going to have them come to our next meeting.
Yep.
And I think that's important, because if it's something that the commission likes and wants to get behind, it may be something that involves Main Street and ultimately a budget and what our recommendations are as to what the town may want to do and help support where these community groups locate and developing kind of a hub area near the,
Are you speaking of the MLK project?
that's part of it, it'd be on the same site, but that whole site would be a
In essence,
hub.
is to, I wouldn't say redevelop, but repurpose some of the buildings so that
So it's much more than that.
more stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's not, it's
That
really,
answers my question.
it's really finding a home for a lot of the community groups, whether it be Main Street, Chamber, tourism, having a center, visitor center there, all of those things in that location. They're just starting to talk about it, but we met with them, and there is a timing issue again with budgets. So if the town were to say, yes, we like that idea, we want to do that, we'd like to see Main Street relocate and have a little office there as well and combine space with tourism and chamber, there may be some funds available, but those have to be decided in the next few months for the following year. We don't want to, the historical site wouldn't want to miss that opportunity. So that's something that's just starting.
So, Rich, can you, would you or Sarah be able to throw in your
2 cents.
2 cents on that at the next meeting?
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're going to have the people from the Historical Society come and talk to us. All right, with that, any other old business or new business? If not, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So we'll
Second? Thank you.
Second.
I gotta get my voting right.
Jerry just sent me something the other day. I want to see if I can